It's such a wonderful opportunity to interview a person who's not only a very accomplished businesswoman, but also my sister-in-law. And that's Karen Kennedy of Los Angeles. Hi, Karen.
Hi,
It's good
Ido.
to see you. There's a 10-hour difference. I appreciate the fact that it's very late for you back in LA. It's pretty early for us here in Israel. And I interviewed people from all you know, fields, entertainment people, political people, and so on and so forth. It's a great joy for me to interview business people, especially when I have a guest like you who has such an incredible story. And I think your story begins with your family legacy. So you are in the real estate business. You specialize in management of properties. We'll talk about how you structure deals. We'll talk about the dangers of echo chamber investments and so on. But first, let's talk about your family legacy. You come from quite a family.
Yes, you joined in early on in your life, but yes, I'm the eldest of six. My grandfather was very active in Israel and the politics of making Israel recognized as a nation back in the day in the first vote. And I, I'm humbled by what the legacy of the family is, frankly.
But
It's a lot to rise to.
I think the legacy I'm referring to is the fact that your grandfather, Lou Boyer, was a pioneer in suburban planning, and he's the person who conceived the famous Boyer plan. And if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, the Boyer plan. So I was sitting in a public administration class at the university, and my grandfather was my grandfather. So I never thought of him in terms of what he was doing. He was just doing his thing. And I'm half asleep in this class many, many years ago, and I hear them talk about how cities are funded and created, and the model that they use is the Boyer plan, and that's the family name. So I immediately came to, and I actually listened in that class, and that evening I called him and I said, Papa, what is the Boyer plan? Oh, it's nothing. It's just a way to create an economic structure to allow cities to be funded and share the services of other existing cities until they had enough tax base and revenues and the need to do it on their own as opposed to sharing fire department, police, or whatever it might have been. I had no idea. I had no idea. In fact, I don't know how many in the family even today know, to be honest, because we don't talk about stuff like that. We should, but we don't.
Well, I recently noticed that there's a lot of information as databases are digitizing their content and uploading it. There's a lot of information about your late grandfather and his business legacy. He was definitely an innovator in the field of urban planning. And to our viewers and listeners that are interested in the history of Southern California, Lou Boyer, along with his partners Mark Taper and Ben Weingart, were the ones who conceived the idea of building the city of Lakewood, which was one of the largest development projects at the time post-World War II. And then Lou Boyer went on to develop much of San Fernando Valley, including
Yes.
Oak Park, West Hills, Agora Hills, and so on and so forth. And so he was a big player. And as you mentioned, Karen, he also was very active on behalf of the Jewish community. And he was a big supporter of the State of Israel, a big supporter of the civil rights movement. In fact, we have lots of archival material with him and Martin Luther King and so on, and late Mayor Bradley. And the entire family. I think his brother Mark was also very much involved in LA
Yes.
politics, Mark Boyer. Anyhow, so that's his family legacy. No wonder that despite of your training as a media person, and when I met you, you were actually a publisher of a magazine called TV Facts. I even remember fondly the T-shirt that said TV Facts on it. I
Yes.
had it for a long time. But you were drawn naturally into the family legacy, which is real estate. So tell us about how your company, NAS, National Assets Services, come about. Tell us about the kind of work that you do and how you structure your business. Because and I'm not saying this because you're my sister-in-law. I've heard some of your colleagues speaking about you in admiration, the way you handle things, the way you structure things, the clarity of your thought, all those things. Please tell us, how did NAS come about and what makes it so unique?
Well, NAS came about with the subprime debacle that happened in 2007 and 8, and real estate went upside down because of lending practices that had gone afoul. And as a result, I was forced to open my own doors, which your wife, my sister, had been asking me to do for many years, but I didn't want the responsibility. But I had no choice. I love working. I need to work, especially in those days. And so I opened the doors with 6 contracts, working with groups that were on the verge, groups of investors that were on the verge of foreclosure, and I saved deals. And through word of mouth, I expanded the business from myself and one other person and a bookkeeper, essentially, to be now 15 of us. And it's the same group. People come to work with me and they don't leave. So the person who has the least amount of tenure is, I believe, 10 years working with me, because I don't think of people as working for me, because I still am a working person myself, every day. And there's nothing that I ask them to do that I haven't done myself, ever. So I bring a lot of experience to the table, um, things that are fixing problems, whether they're in real estate or in life. It really is, you can fix the thing happening in the moment, but trying to figure out what caused it in the beginning so it doesn't happen again, especially in business, is it's something you have to open your eyes to and be willing to learn the hard lessons. And I think you learn more from your failures and challenges than you do from your successes. At least that's
Yeah,
been my experience.
absolutely. That's a very important lesson. If you had to typify the deals that you're doing, can you share with us the categories? What types of deals
Oh,
you
sure.
specialize?
So, single tenant, triple net, credit investment grade credit tenants. Those are, that's where I started sponsoring my own deals. After I saved a lot of deals, I was effectively putting myself out of business because I saved the deal and then I'd sell it because there's always a time to sell. Um, and, um, and so I was losing assets, all different types, multifamily, student housing, assisted living, um, office, all types of office, from huge skyscraper types in major cities, always in the United States, all the way down to single, garden style apartment office buildings and everything in between. Student housing, we're all over the country, and multifamily, but they each bring their own kind of unique challenges. Retail, which is where I cut my teeth in real estate myself, because my grandfather didn't do retail. So I didn't have to compete with the legacy in that field. So I got involved in all sizes of retail, working for other companies. And I office, of course, which is now becoming, especially after the pandemic, it's changing its stripes, if you will, to become more useful, and industrial. So we handle all asset types and always have. Right now, I'm sponsoring as well because not only did I save deals, but I also found myself really trying to take care of the potential of what people needed to do. They'd bring me, because they trusted me, they'd bring me deals, and they'd ask me what I thought of these deals. And I couldn't tell them what I really felt because I had nothing else to offer them. But I told them nonetheless, because they either believed me or they didn't believe me. And so I just found that it was very interesting to try and gain and keep people's confidence when I had nothing to offer them except I wouldn't do that deal, and tell them the negatives of why I wouldn't do a deal. And so I thought, well, maybe I should sponsor and do a deal myself. So I did. The first deal I did was with Clorox as my tenant, and a great tenant. They're still there. They just renewed after a 10-year deal. And we're in the process of selling it because now's the time to sell it when it has a new full-term lease attached to it.
Now, many of your deals are the type of deals that could be described as club deals, which means that you bring a group of investors, right,
Oh,
to
yes.
join you in. That's
Yes.
what we call here in Israel a club deal.
Oh,
And so the question is, what are the benefits of potential investors, people that go with you? What should they expect from the deal?
well, they don't have recourse debt. So when they're an investor in a deal, I have the exposure, but not the investors. So as a result, it's something that allows them to be protected from the downside of a deal as an investor. They get all the benefits, but if a deal, has a problem with it, they don't get the negative side of that. They would lose their investment, but they don't have the negative repercussions on their credit or anything else. That falls to me. I take that. And so when I take that, it's something that is personal to me. Many of the sponsors from years ago would say that they had their own money in the deals. They were an investor side by side with all the other investors, but they weren't. They were the manager of an LLC, which was an investor on title, but they had that was as far as it went. It wasn't money, it was a title, and they had non-accredited investors. I only in their deal, in their entity, which they managed. I only take accredited investors by definition of the IRS, and so I take on all the risk, and I have my own cash in every single deal that I do, every one of them, because
That's
I'm
amazing.
decision maker. It's amazing I was able to put it all together. The first couple of deals, I was like, I don't, I
So
know how to do it,
you
but,
serve as a buffer between the investor and the
and
if
I
God
tell them,
forbid. Yeah,
yes, and I tell them when something is going wrong, I tell them that real time. I don't hide. We're very transparent. I insist upon it because the world is a very uncertain place, more so today than it was, when I opened my doors in 2008. But it's people have to trust. They have to trust that I'm going to tell them what really is going on. And I'm not hiding anything because I believe that if you listen to somebody else, that maybe there's a nugget of information. I'm just a person. I don't know everything, but if
right.
I listen to them, maybe I'll come away with something that will either tweak something in my head, or it will allow me to understand in a different perspective what the hesitancy is and why things are not going right, whether it's at the property level or within the markets as at large, right? But we use fixed term debt. I don't believe in adjustable debt because the markets shift under your feet. So I like to underwrite conservatively, a little bit aggressive at times, but because I can see that properties have been left untouched. Something I just bought recently. This is a perfect example. The most obvious thing in a multifamily home is that you want to be able to do your laundry and not go down to some common area laundry room, right? Where you sit there and you wonder, did I get all my socks or did that missing sock disappear on somebody else's basket?
Which
And
is
so
like a global, by the way, universal mystery with the socks, by the
it
way.
is, it truly is. I'm still looking for some. And so every single unit in this 123 unit deal in Texas has the plumbing for a washer and a dryer. And it's not more than a few $1,000s to put everything in. And the seller didn't put one machine in. So the market shows that every other competition around the area has that. Well, that's money left on the table. Of course, they can't drive their rents. All I have to do is put in the washer and dryer. It's not a brain
Right,
trust, but
right.
you have to be willing to see what's obvious and what's there. I send my team in, and I have a very trusted team, including third parties that I've worked with for many years, some of whom I've trained myself, who go in and they tell me what's really wrong because lenders, they just send in a consultant and the consultant says, oh, you need a new roof in X number of years. Well, duh. But I dig much deeper than that because
Yeah,
that's
we
where
should
you can
mention
get hurt.
also that before you launched NAS, you worked as an executive for major real estate companies for many, many decades. And so we bring to the table tremendous experience. Now, let me ask you a question. You mentioned before we started the recording the dangers of echo chamber investing.
Yes.
Can you elaborate? Can you explain what is it, echo chamber investment? Why is it dangerous?
Well, I think people um, they listen to, with all these algorithms is mind-boggling and all of the tech information that's out there and now AI. People tend to listen to the same things over and over again, and that reinforces something that may be predicated based on very poor assumptions. Now, maybe it
Right.
isn't, but in large part it could be. So if you put a group of family office people who handle wealth for families, not huge wealth, but financial advisors, that ilk, right? And a bit bigger than that. I consider myself to be a boutique firm because I have no desire to get any bigger than this. I want to know who the people are that are invested with me. I want to know their stories. And so I want to work with people that are of a similar, that have the same sense of business
Yeah.
development.
Like-minded people.
Yes, very much so. But if you have surrounded yourself and you're in a conference of financial advisors, and the financial advisors are repeating to each other the most obvious things, as though that makes it more worthwhile and more on point. It isn't necessarily. It doesn't, it could be, but it isn't necessarily. And it reinforces poor assumptions. And that is, it erodes good decision making. And then people look back and they say, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? And it wasn't them necessarily. It sometimes is their advisors who they were really counting on. But
Right. I think that sometimes also when we repeatedly, when the algorithm is feeding us with that same message time and again on business opportunities, investment opportunities, and real estate and so on, what happens is that we also lose the ability to think critically. And so we are consuming that information mindlessly. That's a big danger. And I think that you're pointing to a very, very important phenomenon that comes with technology. What do you suggest that we do in order to, if I want to invest money, what can I do to minimize the risk of exposure to echo chamber
well, I think
decision
that you
making?
need to, people need to expand. You're not abandoning the trust in your advisors. First of all, that it's not what's happening. That's not what I'm suggesting because it's very difficult. People trust me. I'm the decision maker. Um, but it's about strengthening the individual's judgment. So as you say, you want to have a salad of different approaches so that you hear the different perspectives and then you can bring it all together. And in bringing it all together, you can decide which one you're going to give more credence to and which one you're not, because it just doesn't make sense to you because you've gathered information independent of everybody else from sources that, whether it's people you know. Somebody asked one of my trusted associates just today, I think she told me, said, I heard that there's a lot of bad areas in this town. Is that true? And she said, well, there's bad areas in every town. There are good people and there are not so good people. So you don't drive around in the area and we would never buy there. So, and you should get in a car if you don't feel comfortable and check it out yourself. And we give them sources on how to check what we're saying and fact check us, because I want people have to feel good. I'm asking them to trust me with their money.
Right.
And it's often 1031 money, if you will, where they're avoiding paying capital gains on something they just sold. And they made the money, so they're not usually afraid of losing the money because they know how to make it again if they need to. But their kids, their grandkids, that's what they're trying to protect. And so it's really important that they understand how to gather the information in today's world, not the world that I grew up in, certainly, when there were 3 TV channels, right? So
Yeah. And I think you really nailed it. The trust is the issue of our time. This is really the biggest
yeah.
challenge in every vector. It is the issue of our time, and it really affects every dimension of business. Let me ask you in conclusion. So you have a wonderful website, but you also have a portion of the website that talks about a system that you developed called NAS Investments Solution, NASIS. So tell us a little bit about that, how you structure that, and why should people pay attention to it?
Well, there's a lot of papers I've written that are on there that'll put you to sleep at night, I'm sure. But NAS is National Asset Services. So that's what I started with in 2008. I used that structure. It was asset management, not property management, but asset management over failing investments that people had as a group. In those days, it was tenants in common, which were referred to as TICs. Lenders thought that they had nailed the right way to do business, but in fact they had not, because the IRS required a group of total strangers to vote unanimously to sell, to do a lease. I mean, it was crazy stuff. And so, and they leveraged each other at moments of decision making, which was very ugly. But I managed to get through it and save deals, as I said. Now, moving forward, after doing so much for so many years to help people, I'm using a structure called a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust. And I formed NAS Investment Solutions as a acquisition arm for the investors who are in the deals that I asset manage today. And NAS Investment Solutions has been around for 7, 8 years. That's when I started doing my own deals and sponsoring them, putting my own money at risk and my good name. And so I have found that people have come to listen to what I have to say and trust me, because I don't hold things back. If somebody says to me, oh, I've got this amount of money and it's all I have, I want to put it in your deal. I say it's not a good idea for you to take everything that you have and put it in one deal. Yes, it would be good for me, right? Because I raise equity and I buy the property without that equity. With my own equity, source of equity, and a fund that I created. But then I sell the equity to new investors. But it isn't smart to do that. Now, not many sponsors would say, I don't think you should put all of your money with me. Very few. In fact, I can't think of any. But there may be a few out there. It sets me apart. And people who know me trust me as a result, because I'm very, very straightforward, very frank, as you know.
Yeah, and I think that you outlined very clearly all the reasons that made you so successful over the years. I think this was also educational for me. I think our time is running out and we have to wrap, but this was such an educational experience for me, and I thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to hearing what our friends have to say about our conversation. And if they have any questions, please put them in the comment section, and we will make sure that Karen Kennedy and her team at NAS answers your questions. And thank you, Karen, for doing this in such a late hour of the night. And greetings from Jerusalem.
And from Venice, California. Bye, Ido. Hugs to the family.